Until 1990, South Africa was governed by the rules of apartheid, which means separation in Afrikaans, a deeply vile and shameful system. In short, it was as follows. Africans were forced to live in reservations, known as Bantustans. They had no right to attend universities for whites. Later, this rule was relaxed, but still, the number of black people able to receive higher education remained extremely low. Everything in the country, from hospitals to park benches, was divided, for whites and for blacks. Hospitals for blacks were funded on a residual basis, unlike hospitals for whites, and they constantly lacked medicines and doctors. A black person had no right to be outside the reservation, for example, in major cities, without a special permit. This sad list could go on for a long time. Nelson Mandela, a saint to Africans, spent almost his entire life fighting for this system of segregation to fall. He wanted both whites and blacks to have equal rights and work together to build a prosperous state. And in 1990, his cherished dream came true. Under the weight of various circumstances, then President of South Africa, Frederick de Klerk, agreed to abolish apartheid and hold democratic elections. Mandela became a national hero and the first black president of South Africa. However, as is often the case, the expectations of idealists quickly faded. Black Africa began to take revenge on the whites. Over the past 3 decades, out of 300,000 farming families, descendants of the Boers, by 2022, there were no more than 60,000 left in South Africa. The genocide of the white population in South Africa has taken on far more horrific forms. A lone white man or woman outside the areas where Europeans live compactly is almost guaranteed to fall prey to street gangs, or even just groups of homeless people who roam freely in the central parts of major cities: Pretoria, Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and Soweto. Once, under the hated apartheid regime, these were well-maintained, orderly, and, most importantly, safe neighborhoods. Now, everything is different. On the porticos of grand buildings, yesterday's oppressed Africans sleep, buried in filthy rags. In the once beautiful, now foul-smelling parks, tent cities of the homeless appear and disappear, surviving through petty theft and selling drugs to others as unfortunate as they are. Whites are robbed, raped, and killed. Of course, not only whites fall victim to sexual violence. The masses of Africans, most of them uneducated and with a high unemployment rate, vent their dissatisfaction with their impoverished and hopeless lives on fellow black Africans. The number of murders per 100,000 people is one of the highest in the world, 34 cases. The number of rapes, including those of minors and men, is simply shocking. Every 4th woman in the country has been subjected to sexual violence. Add to this the enormous number of HIV-infected people and the spread of other infectious diseases, a life expectancy of just 49 years, and a 40% unemployment rate in the many shanty towns where people live on less than $2 a day, with no access to water, electricity, or sanitation, let alone medical care, and the bleak picture of today's reality is almost complete. Let's focus on the recent period of 2020 to 2021 to detail this reality further. During that time, South Africa experienced its worst outbreak of violence, murders, looting, and unrest in many years. It all began after the sentencing of former President Jacob Zuma, who was accused of contract killings, corruption, and even rape. Zuma, a hater of the LGBT community, and who contributed to the killing of 1,500 white farmers, saw his supporters take to the streets. But soon, their actions escalated into mass riots, looting, and clashes with the army and police, involving hundreds of thousands of people, primarily the poorest black population living in chronic poverty. The number of deaths exceeded 150. Damage to transportation infrastructure led to food shortages and the appearance of long lines at grocery stores. Private security companies guarding business districts and white neighborhoods engaged in real battles with armed gangs. The death toll ran into the dozens. The spiral of chaos continued to unwind. With great difficulty and the involvement of the military, the South African government managed to localize and suppress the protests. Today, South Africa's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is trying to pursue a cautious domestic policy aimed at preventing similar events. However, according to analysts, he is not succeeding. Ramaphosa himself has plenty of skeletons in his closet, one of which is his call for a tough crackdown on miners' protests in Marikana in 2012, where 25 people were eventually killed. The country continues to teeter on the edge. The flight of whites from the country continues. In 2024, according to some reports, around 25,000 people left the country. The economic situation, worsened by the exodus of skilled workers, farmers, and business people, continues to deteriorate. And for now, there seems to be no hope for improvement.